Goulston, and I'm here with my good friend, Marty Nemko. He's one of the top career coaches anywhere.
Well, if you're calling me a friend, then the bias is apparent. I could suck.
Yeah, he actually sucks. No. Marty is, there's a term that one of my mentors said, and he said, there's a clarity that is painful. And it's a clarity that is not meant to cause pain. It's just so clear, it's undeniable. And I've known Marty, we've known each other now for a number of years. I've never had a conversation with him.
It wasn't painful, right?
No, it could be painful because, and he's very respectful, although, you know, with his New York background, being respectful, but he'll notice something, he'll listen respectfully, and then he will respond, and then he'll ask you, how is that for you? How did that land? And he's very flexible in that conversation. And I'm so pleased that we're spending some time together, and we'll probably upload this conversation to other channels so you can be aware of him, because I think
he's being too nice to me. I'm going to hit you guys between the eyes. I'm going to say my truth, for better or worse. I've had 6,000 clients, and a lot of them are old farts like me. So, you know, you will at least get some honest truth from me. And Mark is a brilliant guy and a kind guy. And between the two of us, we should make it worth your time.
See what I said? Didn't he just do it? Didn't he just cut through that stuff, Mark? Let's get to it. So, you know, I floated out the idea of this, and the idea of this is I'm 60 and the world doesn't want anything from me. So we're going to have a conversation about what to do about that, because it's really painful. In fact, in a couple of days, I'm going to do a 90-minute facilitated conversation with an organization called Age Inclusion in Media, because a lot of people in media who are writers may have had better times 20 years ago, but when they get upwards of 55, 60 or older, nobody's hiring them, and they're in a funk. And so I'm going to try to help ease that funk, but we're here to try to offer something practical. If you're 60 or over and it feels like you still have 20 good years, and with medicine the way it is, maybe even more, and you're not through with the world, but it seems like the world is through with you, what to do about it. So Marty, can you weigh in about how someone who's 60 and older can find a way to get the world to reconnect with them?
I have much to say about this. Of course, it's true. It's easier when you're 40 than you're 60. I want to start with a story, because people love stories. So I want to start with a story. And this guy was and not everybody can be a president. This guy was a president of a bank, small local bank, and he got bought out by Wells Fargo. Their bank got bought out. He was over 60, white hair, and what did he do? He said, you know what? I am, just like you were saying, Mark, the world doesn't want me, but I am too young. I still have something to give. So he made a point of every morning, he has this one small coffee shop, not the greatest coffee shop, and that's his plus, because it was quiet. He would go to this quiet coffee shop. It wasn't a dive, but it was just one step above, and he would have a seat in the corner, and he would make his rule. 3 times a week, he would have coffee. In that coffee, he would invite somebody who was a potential networking contact. And within 2 weeks, this guy became, he never would have thought of doing this, a winery owner, a very prestigious winery, family winery, not huge, but prestigious, hired him to come clean up all of their books, to do everything financial. And he has his whole new career as a financial consultant, like a visiting CFO to wineries. So it can happen. Is it easy? No, but I want to share some things today after Mark has reacted, some practical, no BS truths about how to up your odds of being over 60 or over 70 in being not wiped out, not off the pasture, and being useful. Mark, what do you think?
I'm all ears, and if people see me looking down, it's because I'm taking notes.
See how nice a guy he is. I'm the tough guy, but he's nice. All right. So I have something. My clients have found the following to work. I call it the age edge. It's a three-legged stool that gives you greater strength in the marketplace, even compared to some 20-something. And the three are, and I'll go over them briefly afterwards, is connections, experience, and wisdom. When you are over 60 or even over 50, you have had the time to make connections. Even if you're like me, I'm very transactional, I'm very work-oriented, but you can't help it. Over your 30 or 40 years, you're going to meet people. And they don't just need to be people who are your best buds. They can be what his name was Mark Granovetter. He was some PhD guy who found that people got jobs through their distant ties. He calls it the power of distant ties, because the odds of having your 2 or 3 close best buds having something for you is tiny. But the odds of your top 50 people, even if they don't know you very well, but as long as they like you, is much greater. So reaching out to your extended network. And number 2, you've been around 30, 40, 50 years. You've experienced a hell of a lot. You've developed perspective. You're able to sell, and you got to sell that when you're talking to a prospective hire. And you may have wisdom. I used the word perspective before. You begin to know what is and isn't important. And I believe, and this is anecdotal, you're more likely to be ethical if you're older, because you know that being a cheat, being sleazy, ultimately may be a short-sighted win, but a long-sighted, long-term failure. So you have an age edge, three-legged stool: connections, experience, wisdom. Does it guarantee you'll get a job? No. Does it increase your odds? Absolutely. Mark, what do you think?
I think that's terrific. I want to complement it with something, and this is something that I put out just before the New Year's. It's a New Year's resolution, and I found a little Instagram video which I'll repost after Christmas. This is definitely not a Marty kind of thing, but it's more like a Mark thing. And what I suggest is that when you wake up in the morning every day, you take out your phone and you send a video thank you to someone. And this could be a distant person. And the thank you has 3 parts. I actually wrote about this in a Harvard Business Review blog called How to Give a Meaningful Thank You. And the 3 parts would be, and again, when you're older, a lot of older people occasionally are sentimental. I wonder what happened to that person in high school or college. And, and look, if you meet someone who's a real a-hole, well, so you go to someone else. Or if you reach out and they say, I'm sorry, he or she passed away. Geez, I'm sorry to hear about that. But the thank you is you reach out and you wake up and you say, hey there, this is Mark Goulston. I don't know if you remember, but we used to be friends in high school. Well, we were roommates in college, and then time drifted away. I'm making a habit now to start my day of thinking of people that I remember and I'm thankful to. And you came up today, and the first thing, and you thank them for something specific. So
I love it.
I'm actually going to do one, and if he finds this, we're going to reacquaint each other. I can't believe I'm saying this.
I love that idea. I just think it's terrific.
So the first thing is, this is what we did. I'm thankful for it. The second thing is, you went out of your way to do it. And not only did you go out of your way to do it, you actually followed up. Nobody follows up. And the third part of it is, this is what it personally means to me. So this is a real, I've never said this before, and I'm going to find this person and send it to him. Frank Baker. We were freshmen at University of Vermont. It was freaking cold up there. I was a nerdy, neurotic freshman. And of course, back in those days, and I never drank before. And so in those days, sometimes you get a little drunk. And I remember the night where at 3 a.m, you and I were both pretty much drunk. And and we lived in a dormitory called Chittenden Hall. And way back then, it was one of those things where all the windows are open because during the winter, you had these, the heaters were up full blast. There was no regulation. So we're drunk. It's 3 a.m. We start singing, and it's snow on the ground up there in Burlington. And we just spent an hour and a half throwing snowballs into people's windows. So
I swear to you,
for
that's
an
brilliant.
hour and a half, and we're singing, and they're saying, shut up and whatever. But, I didn't know anything about alcohol, and then we finally finish. And I remember that. I want to thank you for that introduction. And then, of course, I pass out, and we had bunk beds then as freshmen, and I was in the lower thing. And I was so tired that what happened is I fell asleep so deeply that the people in the dormitory who we'd woken up, they buried me in snow in my bunk bed.
Wow.
And I didn't even know it. And, but you got up and you saw they were doing that, and you helped clear away some of the snow, and so I wanted to thank you for that. I wish you'd done it earlier because I did catch pneumonia and I had to go into the infirmary, but I haven't thought about that in over 50 years. And Frank, wherever you are, I hope you're doing well. And wherever you are. So, but every morning, if you send out a video, when I started this practice a year ago, some of the people who started doing it, they said, this is crazy. I'm sending out thank yous, and people are texting me back. One person texted me back and said, I watched your video 6 times and I cried each time. So it's just a little simple thing, but I think if you do something like that, at the very least, you're going to feel better because it's a way of lifting yourself up out of your doldrums, which when you're over 60, there's not a shortage of. And one of the things I do in coaching, and then I'm going to shut up, is the way I work with people is one of the things I try to teach them is the most gracious but direct way to communicate. And the idea being, whether you're angry, upset, or whatever, but I help people to be as articulate, gracious, direct, but humble, so that you can leave any message you send someone else and you have no control over how they're going to react to it. But you leave the conversation or the communication saying, I can't be classier than that. So I teach people, let's make you the classiest that you can be. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. And then, hopefully you hope for the best, but you have no control over how it lands. And so this is kind of a version of that. There may be people that say, that's silly, but you're not hitting on anyone for anything. You're remembering something.
I love that on many grounds. First of all, it reminds me that even when you're over 60, and I've been doing career counseling and coaching for 35 years, I can still learn. And so that's really fun. But I love the idea. But what made it good was not just that it was a video, which in itself was an innovation, and I liked it. And YouTube is much easier, dear viewers, to set up. If you don't do, if you don't have a webcam built into your computer, a Logitech 920C is $70 and wonderful. And either the built-in mic, or I use a little $70 blue snowball mic, and voila, you can make these YouTube videos easily. But the most important thing was the detail. It's one thing for Mark to have said, I'm going to follow up with this guy, but the rich detail of that anecdote, and especially a self-effacing one, where you screwed up. I had a client who didn't do video, but who talked about the time that he got together with his friend in Bangkok, and you know what Bangkok is famous for. And it was the bonding over the negative that really resonated, that was more bonding than if he had talked about his career successes. So the humble piece that Mark said and the anecdote that Mark gave are brilliant, and I love them. And I too looked down and took notes.
Well, that's great. Well, good. Your turn, because we're just alternating things. Let me see if there's anyone. This is still above my pay grade, but I guess people could. Yeah, I'm looking at YouTube, and if anyone is listening in, they can certainly write a question or concern. And this is too much fun to not continue. So look for us to be continuing this on a semi-regular basis. But what were some of the other things you wanted to add, Marty, about being 60 and still wanting to work?
Well, it's certainly true that even despite doing all this, the reality is that they may still not want you. And so you need to, if you want to work, the obvious option is self-employment, but that's terrifying to people. The kind of people who have been working in an organization for their whole life, and now they're suddenly expected at age 69 to be an entrepreneur, well, that's damn scary. Well, I want to talk about there are some low-risk ways to be an entrepreneur that are worth trying. And my very favorite, and this is something I have been touting for 20 years, is a gift cart in office building or large apartment building lobbies. Whereas, if the LA Lakers are doing well, you're selling LA Laker crap. If it's going to be rain, you're selling umbrellas. If it's Valentine's Day, you're selling gift baskets. You're selling whatever. It has unlimited shelf life. You're paying no rent. You're going to go to the owner or the manager of the building and say, hey, this corner of the lobby is sitting useless. You can please all of your tenants for no extra cost. I'll have a high quality cart here. And once you've got one, and I'm not asking you to sit in the cart all the time. You do the first one yourself for 2 months. So you learn the business, and then you clone it. You get your friends to staff the cart. And then you are finding other locations. And that way it's very low risk. It's no big store. You're not paying big monthly rent. You're not paying a huge amount of inventory and unlimited shelf life, minimal regulations, unlike with food. And I think that it can be a low risk way to be an entrepreneur. I have a million other examples, but that's another option. If the world really has rejected you and you want to work, you don't need to be some big scalable entrepreneur who's going to go and make a big investment. We all think about eBay or online selling, but there can even be bricks and mortar like the kind I just described.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, because you're right. A lot of times people just give up. Any thoughts about that mindset? Now, you might be saying, Mark, you're the shrink. You take it on. But that mindset, because it's so tempting and understandable for people to give up. But boy, it's a real slippery road into depression and discouragement, being a pain in the rear to the people who love you. Do you have any thoughts about what people can do when they're tempted by that impulse?
Great question. A buffet of things come to mind. First is baby steps. You're going to if you're already on the path down to depression and just wanting to stay home and do nothing, you're not going to do anything radical or big. So make it a little baby step. Maybe a YouTube video is too much, but send a text or an email to a friend to do whatever. Take a little walk. Take a walk by yourself. Exercise is an antidepressant. Walk to your favorite cafe. Allow yourself the luxury of your favorite dessert. Decide you're going to just play on YouTube and look at fun videos for the hell of it. As silly as it is, I love looking at when they have these videos of doggies giving birth. It provides perspective and seeing those little baby doggy, those little puppies. Do something easy and simple. That's normally the best step out.
I like that. So you just reminded me of something. I'm retired now, but when I was a practicing therapist, one of the things I would discover not infrequently is some of my patients who are depressed when I drill down, they would say, I don't know that I deserve to be happy because I'm totally self-absorbed. I mean, I try to act polite on the surface, but maybe I don't deserve to be happy because the only person I think about is me. So one of the things I would do with them is I would always have a box of healthy snacks that you could buy at a Costco, whatever. And I'd give them a bag of healthy snacks. And I'd say every day, now I'm in Los Angeles, you can't go anywhere without running into people who are homeless. I said, every day, if you see a homeless person, you'll have these healthy snacks in your pocket. You go up to them, and you can be selective, if you're afraid that they might become agitated or violent. I mean, in Los Angeles, there's just too many, so that you have many choices, and you go up to them gradually. You don't want to scare them. And you look at them and you say, hi, my name's Mark. What's yours? You may not know it, but homeless people have names. And they'll look what, and they'll look
simple,
they'll
baby
look
step,
what,
human.
and they may, and they may, and let's say they say Joe, you could say Joe, and then you pull out a healthy snack, because a lot of times people don't want to give money. Oh, they're going to buy drugs, they're going to buy alcohol. And you just look at them and you say, here, hope this makes the day a little bit better, and, take good care. And what happened is these depressed people, so I give them a box of these things, and I'd say, do it every day. And then when they come back, I'd say, how do you feel? And they would all do the same thing. In a grumpy voice, they'd say, I'm better.
I love it.
Begrudgingly, and I'll share something with you because it gets me emotional, sort of emotional. This was, I don't know, it must have been it was before COVID, but I saw some homeless gentleman, and he'd obviously had a stroke, and he had bathroom slippers, and his left arm was twisted because that was the arm that he had a stroke in. And he wasn't hitting on anyone. He wasn't intruding. He was just, walking along with difficulty. And there was something about him that touched me. And so, I was going for a walk, and then I walked back to him, and I put a $50 bill in his right hand. And he looked at me, and he looked at it, and his eyes just started crying. And he looked at me and he said, I love you. It was the best $50 I've spent in a long time.
Yeah, I certainly can understand this. I love that. I actually wrote the healthy snacks thing. I think that's, again, simple baby steps. And it's a corny statement, but it's crazy, but it's true. It does feel better to give than to receive.
Yeah, I'll add another thing, because it's something I may revive after we get past COVID, but I think a little over 2 years ago, I did a TEDx talk, and it's called What Made You Smile Today? And it's a pretty good talk. And I talked about a friend of mine whose daughter was a drug addict, and she was always hitting on him for money. And he didn't like taking calls, but he figured he should stay in touch with her. So every day at 5 p.m., he would text her and say, hey, honey, it's Dad. What made you smile today? And initially she said, oh, looks like I'm going to get money. And he said, no. That ship has sailed. And he just did it. And then after about 2 months, he texted her, and she texted back, and she said, knowing that I'd get your text. And he started to cry. And he said it shifted the relationship because all she ever felt like was a burden. And he said, she's not a burden. The fact that she lies and manipulates and I can't trust is a burden. And so What Made You Smile Today, we started a mission called #WMYST. I think we own it. And we printed up a couple thousand wristbands that said #WMYST or WMYST.org. And here's the campaign is, and you can buy we'll revive it. But the idea is that when someone serves you, a TSA agent, a cashier at Costco, they have name tags, but they're faceless. They're appliances. They're treated like functions. They're treated poorly. And so what I did, before COVID hit, is I'd carry these wristbands, and I'd go up to someone who'd served me, and I'd see their name tag, and I'd say, thank you, Nancy. My name's Mark. And and I said, I have a question for you. And they'd look at me like, am I in trouble? I said, no, you're not in trouble. I'd say, what made you smile today? And not 100%, but I'd say well over 90%, they would look up to think, And then when they looked down at me, it was a different eye contact. And they smiled and they said, my grandchild, my dog. It's a nice day. And then I'd give them 2 wristbands and I'd say, you have a great smile. Here's a wristband to remind you to use it every day. And here's a second one. Give it to someone else. I did it at McDonald's with a cashier. And I think her name was Maria. And that's when you could eat indoors. And I remember there wasn't many people in the McDonald's. And so I got my coffee and I asked her the question. And she kept smiling at me. It got uncomfortable. I had to leave. but I mean, it's like you turn them into a human being. And I'll just share this with you because you're allowing me to. So in the TEDx talk, I shared this anecdote about a young man named Arul in India. And I think we had some sort of email exchange and I must have helped him. And I said, I typed out, Arul, I have a question for you. What made you smile today? So he writes back and he says, nobody as important as you has ever typed my name. So every day when I open my computer, I go to where you typed my name and I touch it. That changed his life. So these are things that we can all do.
I think this is particularly useful for older people who need a pick-me-up. Before we end for today, there's one other thing in terms of getting work for today. I'd like to fulfill our promissory for people who are watching this. Sometimes you can, I've had a number of clients, I call this, make them an offer they can't refuse. So they may not be able to hire you. They may even, I remember a client he wanted a volunteer at a company, but the company said, we have a policy against volunteers unless they're student interns. He said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. This guy was he had been a VP, a strategic planning kind of guy. He says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Just as friend to friend, I'm going to write a strategic plan for this new product that you told me you're working on. And you can toss it. It won't cost you a penny. You can toss it or you can use it. I don't need any credit or whatever. The only thing I'm going to ask is, if in fact it's useful, that you perhaps go to bat for me in trying to get at least a consulting gig or a part-time job or whatever. So you've made them an offer they can't refuse. You're not asking them to go violate company policy. You're using your best skills. You're saying, hey, just friend to friend, I'm doing this. So look for opportunities. And you talked about sharing and giving. You can, of course, do the volunteering thing in the nonprofit sector where there aren't these rules. Volunteer, really picture yourself, what is the nonprofit you believe would have the biggest ripple effect on the world? I am a huge fan of high-achieving kids who are low income. Kids who have already demonstrated that they're smart and they're productive and whatever, but they're not going to have the wealth of things that the rich parents have. So I've donated some money to gifted students in low-income schools. That's my ripple, because I see they have great unmet potential. They're going to get to grow up to be these people who can make a huge difference, but without supportive help, they might not. But ask yourself, what should you volunteer on? Should it be on a board? Should it simply be hands-on? What could use your best skills? Habitat for Humanity? But that could be a way to get to be working and productive, even if they say, now we don't want to pay you.
I love that. It triggers an anecdote I heard, and then we'll try to make it relevant to the people who are over 60. Someone I know is the top music attorney in the world. Real tough negotiator, a New York lawyer. And he represents Jay-Z and Beyonce and all those people, really a tough guy. But one of his stories is when he finished law school, and it wasn't a fancy law school. He didn't come from wealth or anything. He went to some entertainment law firm, and he says to them, all I can give you is $25,000, but I'll give it to you for the chance to work for you. And then you can see it's a chance for you to see if I'm worth anything, and you don't have to hire me, but I will give you $25,000 to hire me just because I think, I think I'm meant for this business.
Wow.
And it was so disarming that the head of the law firm said, well, no, you don't have to pay us. You can come and work for us. You could say, hey, we'll give you, one of our clients, we don't think anything's going to become of them. They're called the Beatles. But I could see going to a nonprofit, if you have a skill set and they need money, you could say, I have a proposition. You could say, I'm still not through with this world. I still have a skill set. I can do this kind of thing. I will donate to your charity $5,000 for just the chance to be able to do some work for you and with you, because I still think I can add value to the world. And after I do that, for a month, if you think that I can add value, I hope you'll think of making a place for me. Now, I know that's really crazy, but it's not that crazy.
Right. Love it. Brilliant. Why don't we move into summary mode so that people can summarize the main things you have said that you want people to remember from having watched this?
I think the main things I've said is it's normal to feel down. It's normal to feel discouraged, but it's a rapid, slippery slope from there into being depressed and feeling like you're burdened and all that, and then even darker thoughts. So in summary, what I've suggested is that by reaching out and doing something to other people, including an unsolicited thank you, or reaching out and giving healthy snacks to a homeless person, and the more that you can do, not just a random act of kindness, but a random act of generosity when you're feeling so depleted, there's a good chance that after you do that, you're going to feel, you cared about the world today.
I was particularly blown away by the video idea. I think that has an additional power. The video with the anecdote that is bonding about something that wasn't positive about you, but negative. That was a brilliant idea that I had never thought of, and I'm grateful to you for that.
Well, thank you. I'm going to find Frank Baker.
As well you should. And so my little summaries are three things. Yes, you can be over 60 and it's one or two strikes against you, but even in a guy has two strikes, he can hit a grand slam home run. And I've had plenty of clients do that. And so think about whether you using that the aged edge of your connections, your power of your, including the weak ties, your experience, all that experience, the perspective and wisdom, that can sometimes work. The idea of taking low risk entrepreneurship, you don't need, even if you're not a born entrepreneur, maybe a good idea. And then finally, make them an offer they can't refuse. Your idea was brilliant with the $25,000 to the law firm, but it doesn't have to be that. You can, whether it be volunteering for a nonprofit or just going to somebody at a company and say, I can do this for you. Make them an offer they can't refuse. Speaking of New York.
I love that. And I'll just add on the offer they can't refuse. If you can step back, one of the ways to think of what you do is to fill in the following blanks. Companies hire me when, in order to, so that. So you want to drill down and fill in from your experience. If you're an accountant or numbers person, companies hire me when they, when they're challenged by making sense of their financials and whatever, because it's just too confusing, in order to be able to articulate something that's measurable about their business, so that they can gain the confidence of, who knows, investors or whatever. But the point is, think of what your unique skill is who needs it most, when would be the point that they would need it most, when would be the point of urgency, identify those companies that fill that criteria, and then you can approach them. And it may be a young tech company, and they might say, what do you want, old man? But if you have that skill, or you can accomplish things that they need, you can then go there and you can offer them things. You can say, look, I have a proposition. What? I'll pay you $5,000 to work with you to try to help you solve a problem that I have a sense you have, and you haven't solved it yet. And you are under no obligation, and you can keep the $5,000.
Love it.
Well, this is great. This is going to be the first of many. And so I hope